It's August 1944, somewhere in occupied France. A German infantry officer stands at a crossroads in the darkness. The sound starts as a distant rumble, then grows into a mechanical roar that won't stop. All night, every night, an endless parade of American trucks, each one hauling ammunition, fuel, and food. Everything an army needs to keep advancing, keep fighting, keep winning. The Wehrmacht had conquered most of Europe with their legendary blitzkrieg. They understood mechanized warfare better than anyone. Or so they thought. What they were hearing, what kept them awake at night, was something they'd never seen before. Something they didn't believe was even possible. This is the story of the Red Ball Express, the operation that proved World War II wasn't just one on battlefields. It was one on highways. And the men who drove those highways changed the course of history. June 6, 1944, D-Day. Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy and established a foothold in Hitler's fortress Europe. By late July, American tanks finally break through the German lines in Operation Cobra. General George S. Patton's Third Army explodes across France, racing eastward at speeds that shock even Allied commanders. There's just one problem. Actually, it's the biggest problem an advancing army can face: supply. Patton's tanks are covering 80 miles per week, far ahead of schedule. His forces are burning through 800,000 gallons of gasoline every single day. Each division needs 750 tons of supplies daily just to function. In heavy combat, that number triples. The Allies had deliberately bombed French railways to rubble before D-Day to prevent German reinforcements. Smart tactical move. Devastating logistics problem. The major ports are still in enemy hands or completely destroyed. The only supply point is the makeshift harbor at Normandy, hundreds of miles behind the advancing front. Every military planner in the European theater is looking at maps, doing calculations, and reaching the same conclusion. What Patton is attempting to do is logistically impossible. The German High Command certainly thinks so. They've been fighting for 5 years. They know exactly how far an army can advance before its supply lines snap. They're counting on it. Let the Americans overextend themselves, then counterattack when they run out of fuel and ammunition. But the Germans are about to learn something that will shake them to their core. You don't beat America's army. You face America's entire industrial civilization. August 25, 1944. After 36 hours of urgent planning, a revolutionary solution launches: the Red Ball Express. The concept is simple, but the scale is staggering. Take every available truck in the European theater, assign them to dedicated one-way highways, mark them with red balls, a railroad term for priority express cargo. Close the roads to all civilian traffic. Military police at every intersection. No stops, no delays, just drive. At its peak, 5,958 trucks operated in a continuous loop, from Cherbourg in Normandy to supply depots near Paris and beyond. Over 400 miles of highway reserved exclusively for this massive conveyor belt of American might. The target? Deliver 12,500 tons of supplies every single day. But here's what makes this story remarkable. 75% of the drivers are African American soldiers. 23,000 men, most of whom had never driven a truck before the war. Young men, most under 24 years old, who enlisted to serve their country, only to be told that black soldiers weren't capable of combat roles. So they were assigned to the Quartermaster Corps to drive trucks. And these men took that assignment and turned it into something extraordinary. Brigadier General Ewart Plank, who implemented the system, understood what was at stake. He declared, "Let it never be said that a lack of supplies stopped Patton when the Germans couldn't." The men of the Red Ball Express weren't about to let that happen. Official regulations said trucks should travel at 25 miles per hour in organized convoys with proper rest breaks every 6 hours. Reality? The drivers ripped the governors off their engines. They left Cherbourg the moment their trucks were loaded. They pushed their speeds past 60 miles per hour on bombed-out French roads. They drove in blackout conditions with headlights barely bright enough to see. And they didn't stop. One Red Ball veteran recalled being so exhausted he couldn't keep his eyes open. The convoy couldn't stop. So he and his co-driver switched seats while the truck was still rolling. Lieutenant Charles Stevenson remembers a colonel from Patton's Third Army literally commandeering his entire convoy of fuel at gunpoint. The front was moving so fast, sometimes drivers never found their designated delivery points. They'd just sell their cargo to whoever needed it most. The men worked 20-hour shifts. They slept on piles of rubble still warm from recent battles. They ate when they could. They drove through German sniper fire, past minefields, under the constant threat of Luftwaffe attack. Though by 1944, Allied air superiority meant those attacks were rare. The Germans simply didn't have the planes left to spare. But the biggest enemy wasn't the Wehrmacht. It was exhaustion and breakdowns. These trucks weren't designed for this kind of punishment. They hauled loads well beyond their capacity, over roads destroyed by war day after day without proper maintenance. Yet on August 29th, just 4 days after launching, the Red Ball Express hit its peak performance. 132 truck companies operating 5,958 vehicles delivered 12,342 tons of supplies in a single day. That record was never matched during the operation's 82 days of existence. Let's talk about what this looked like from the other side. German divisions in 1944 relied on horses, not as a backup, as their primary logistics system. A typical German division had 10 times as many horses as motor vehicles. They ran on oats as much as oil. Their famous blitzkrieg tactics could only penetrate as far as their horse-drawn supply wagons could follow. Meanwhile, American divisions were fully mechanized, and behind them rolled the Red Ball Express, operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. German officers who had seen American supply dumps in North Africa were already concerned. At Kasserine Pass, when German forces won their first battle against Americans, the captured supplies stunned them. Mountains of equipment, ammunition, food, fuel, more in one supply dump than entire German divisions possessed. Now, in France, they're facing something even more demoralizing. Those convoys running all night, every night. The sound was psychological warfare. It announced to every German soldier within earshot, your enemies have unlimited supplies. You're rationing your last ammunition. They're bringing more guns, more bullets, more fuel, more everything, and they'll never stop coming. General Patton himself declared that the 2.5-ton truck is our most valuable weapon. Colonel John D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander Eisenhower's son, stated flatly, "Without the Red Ball truck drivers, the advance across France could not have been made." This wasn't an exaggeration. German strategic planning had always assumed that Allied advances would eventually outrun their logistics. It's what stopped Napoleon. It's what stopped Germany itself in Russia. But America had turned logistics into a weapon. Time magazine called it the miracle of supply, and noted that it was begotten of a people accustomed to great spaces, to transcontinental railways, to nationwide trucking chains. The Germans had never understood this. They were fighting an army. They faced an industrial empire. By November 16, 1944, the Red Ball Express had delivered 412,193 tons of supplies to 28 different divisions, over 82 days of continuous operation. 122 million ton-miles of cargo moved. The operation ended when the port of Antwerp finally opened, French railways were repaired and portable fuel pipelines were installed. The dedicated highways weren't needed anymore. But the impact of those 82 days echoed far beyond 1944. The men of the Red Ball Express had accomplished something that military experts said was impossible. They'd kept Patton's army supplied during one of the fastest advances in military history. They'd helped shorten the war in Europe by months. And they did it while facing racism in their own army. These soldiers couldn't serve in combat roles because of the color of their skin. They were given the support jobs, the roles that military leadership considered less important. These men took that assignment and proved that logistics wins wars.
The Double V campaign, victory over fascism abroad, victory over racism at home, resonated deeply with these soldiers. They saw their service as proof of their capabilities, their courage, their citizenship. After the war, their story became somewhat famous. The Army publicized their achievements. A 1952 movie bore the operation's name. But for too long, their contribution remained in the shadow of more celebrated victories. Today, the Red Ball Express serves as a reminder of a fundamental truth. Wars aren't just won by the soldiers who fire the weapons. They're won by the people who make sure those soldiers have weapons to fire, food to eat, fuel to move, everything they need to keep fighting. The German generals had understood mechanized warfare. They'd perfected the tactics of rapid assault, but they'd never grasped the deeper principle. Modern war is a competition between entire societies, between industrial bases, between logistic systems. 23,000 men, most of them denied the right to fight, won their war by driving, by refusing to stop, by delivering victory one truckload at a time, through exhaustion and danger and endless miles of war-torn roads. The Red Ball Express didn't just supply an army, it revealed the true nature of American power in World War II, and the courage of men who deserve to be remembered, not as support troops, but as the drivers of victory.